The words that finally broke me were, "Your role has essentially automated itself into obsolescence." It wasn't a sudden, loud sound, but a quiet, sharp snap, like the creak of a new bone settling. Terry, the fresh-faced VP of marketing, a suit with too much ambition and a smile that never reached his eyes, delivered the news. He looked at me as if I were a legacy system he couldn't wait to decommission. He stood on the stage of the all-hands meeting, his voice echoing over the microphone, talking about vision and efficiency. The screens behind him flashed with buzzwords like synergy and resource alignment. A few people clapped, some even nodded, pretending to grasp the concepts. I watched from the back, my lukewarm coffee tasting like metal, and felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. He didn't glance my way once during the presentation, but 20 minutes later, I found myself in a small, glass-walled conference room he called the Ideation Hub. Just him and me. The door didn't even fully close, as if privacy was a luxury we could no longer afford. He didn't sit, just said it plainly. "Your position has been streamlined. Between our new campaign management tools and your recent project, we've determined it's, well, redundant." I blinked once, then gave a slow, controlled nod, the way you would when receiving news of an inevitable goodbye. He smiled, as if I were making this easy for him by not creating a scene. "You should be proud, Chloe. Your work made this possible. That's real impact." Impact. A strange word for wiping away 8 years of my life, forgotten lunches, and the constant hum of my server in the basement. My mouth was dry, but I said nothing. What was there to say to a man who believed a brain could be replaced with a fancy SaaS subscription? I stood up. My chair scraped against the tile, a small, sad sound. 2 hours. That was all they gave me to pack my things. 2 hours to erase myself from the network I had painstakingly built. The moment I got back to my desk, my Slack access was already disabled. No farewell messages, no data exports, just a locked laptop screen and a security guard, David, who kept looking at his watch like I was a forgotten takeout order. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just went through the motions, monitor by monitor, cable by cable. I packed my keyboard with the reverence of handling a precious antique. I folded the jacket I kept on the back of my chair and slid my tiny succulent named Kevin into a cardboard box. With every item I touched, the edges of my numbness seemed to sharpen. Nobody looked up. That's what I'll always remember. The same people whose posts I had salvaged, whose digital crises I'd solved at all hours, whose anxiety attacks I'd talked down when a campaign wouldn't launch. None of them met my gaze. Perhaps they thought I did too good a job. Perhaps they had already replaced me in their minds with a chatbot named Mark. I got on the train with my box, just another ghost with a pink slip in my eyes. As I watched the city fade into a blur outside the window, I opened the terminal app on my phone. My fingers moved from muscle memory, tunneling into a private port linked to the old server humming away in my basement. It was a loyal old machine. I opened the crontab configuration file, the one I had never documented, not out of spite, but because it never seemed necessary. It was the central hub, the gatekeeper. Every major automation I had written, from report generation to social media syncing to data reconciliation, required a daily handshake key that only this server could generate. A quiet, little ceremony that made the machine gods say yes. I scrolled through the code, saw the logs from earlier that morning. Everything had worked perfectly, as always. One more digital heartbeat in a system built on faith and routine. Then I reached the command line. Without ceremony, without anger, without even a deep breath, I disabled the key. I hit enter. The script went dark. No alarms, no fireworks, just a profound silence. But somewhere in that skyscraper, behind glass walls and ergonomic desks and endless inspirational posters. A quiet, invisible, and irreversible countdown had begun. I sat back, staring out at the smudged skyline, and wondered if any of them would even notice before it was too late. The security guard, David, hadn't spoken. He just loomed by my desk like I might throw a stapler. His badge read, "Contractor" in all caps, as if he was forbidden from showing empathy. I asked if I could send one last email to the team. David blinked slowly, then mumbled something into his radio. He came back with a practiced shrug. "Not allowed. Sorry." "Sure you are, David." I was halfway through packing when my monitor went black. They had killed my badge, and with it, my system access. A box still had loose wires hanging out like tangled vines, no time for tidiness. I checked the health alerts on my phone, locked out everywhere. I left the office with a cardboard box and a tote bag. No fanfare, no good luck balloon tied to my chair. Just the soft click of a door closing behind me, like the end of a bad first date. The air outside felt different, or maybe I was just breathing wrong. I walked past the smokers, pretending not to stare, down the block to the station, and sat on a bench still damp with yesterday's rain and the faint smell of a forgotten sandwich. My feet ached, my back hurt, but my fingers moved with muscle memory, unlocking my phone, opening the SSH terminal. No corporate VPN anymore. No firewalls, just me and the clean connection straight to the core. I tapped in the credentials, 8 years old and never once changed. The server in my basement purred to life with a digital whisper. I checked the logs. Everything was still healthy, the job scheduler intact. The last authentication key was distributed at 5 a.m. Every subsystem responded like an obedient soldier. Status, healthy. Workflow, flowing. They were still alive because I had left the engine running. I could have left it that way, could have walked away and let them have the skeleton of my work, stripped of its soul, but still twitching. But some part of me, some stupid, stubborn part, refused to let them pretend I didn't matter. That I hadn't been the heart of the system they now paraded around like they had built it. So, I did the one thing they didn't train out of me. I acted. In the terminal window, I scrolled to the cron job that handled the handshake ping. My small, guardian demon, set to broadcast the day's key to the core endpoints every morning without fail. I highlighted the line. I typed a single hashtag in front of it. I commented it out. Just like that. The next morning's key would never be born. No ping, no green light, no doors opening. Just a quiet failure. Untraceable at first, then maddening in its scope. No error, no alert, no red warning. Just scripts waiting for a signal that would never arrive. I closed the terminal. No drama, no fanfare, just off. A train screeched in behind me. I boarded with my box, sat by the window, and watched the platform slide away. It wasn't revenge, not yet. Revenge is a spectacle. This was theaterless. It was just a consequence. By the time I got home, the first just checking in texts from coworkers had already started to arrive. I didn't reply. They would find out soon enough. The basement was cool and quiet. I passed the humming server rack like a priest ignoring his altar. The LEDs blinked their holy pattern, unaware they had just been silenced. I stood there for a moment, half tempted to flip the switch and kill it all right then. But no, better to let them die on their own timeline. Systems like that don't go out with a bang. They rot, slowly and elegantly. I poured a glass of water, sat at the kitchen table, and watched the clock tick past 9 p.m. 12 hours until someone's dashboard forgot how to breathe, until an intern got blamed for a blank report, until Terry started sweating through his collar. And still, no calls, no emails. No, hey, quick question about your code. Just silence. It told me everything I needed to know. They still thought I was replaceable. They hadn't noticed the ticking yet. At exactly 9 o'clock a.m., the world was still turning. The morning caffeine had barely seeped into the bloodstream of middle managers when the first Slack notifications flew like hornets out of a kicked nest. Hey, anyone else seeing blank dashboards? My 9 a.m. client report isn't generating. The scheduling system says invalid signature. By 9:04 a.m., the whispers had bloomed into full-blown panic. Engineers jabbed at keyboards like defibrillators. Team leads blamed the new vendor. An intern rebooted the router 3 times. They thought it was a fluke. The real comedy? They blamed the platform migration that happened 2 weeks ago. Terry, slicker than a buttered croissant, scrambled together a rapid-fire Zoom update for the board, calling it a minor latency hiccup stemming from legacy dependencies. Legacy. That was the word he used to describe the skeleton I'd left behind. Meanwhile, the scheduler scripts, those beautiful little digital hands that sorted billing logs, cross-checked forms, and sanitized inputs before pushing them downstream, all sat in a timeout, waiting, expecting, starving. Because the one thing they all needed, the handshake key from my server, never came. Not missing, just never born. By 9:27 a.m., the ticketing system was clogged with error codes no one recognized. The finance team couldn't access payment queues. Auto-generated client newsletters sent out blank templates. Marketing campaign tools failed authorization. And the real kicker? No one knew why. They weren't down, just disconnected. It was like the house still had walls, doors, and furniture, but no oxygen. And me? I was still in my pajamas, sitting on my porch with a chipped coffee mug and the world's most satisfying front row seat. My cat purred on the windowsill. The sky had never looked more intensely blue. I opened LinkedIn, out of habit, and there it was. John T., Director of Client Relations. Anyone else experiencing weird downtime this morning? If you're in digital campaign ops, shoot me a DM. We're trying to isolate something odd in our stack. Hashtag Monday Mystery #Tech Life. I snorted so hard I almost spilled my coffee. Monday Mystery, huh? That's cute. Like it's a Scooby-Doo episode and not the slow implosion of a system built entirely on my unpaid overtime. Another post popped up. Marcy G., lead strategist. Shout out to our IT heroes today. Systems are being a little quirky, but we know you'll get us back on track. Flex laptop. Quirky. That's one word for watching the digital scaffolding collapse in slow motion. My phone buzzed with Slack messages to my personal number. People who used to sit 5 feet away from me were now suddenly interested in touching base. Hey, quick question. Do you happen to know where the latest script backups were stored? I think something's misfiring. No pressure if you're busy. Weird question. You didn't happen to host any tools off-site, did you? Just trying to rule things out. Just wanted to say again, thank you for everything you did here. Things are rough this morning. I stared at the screen, watching the panic write itself in polite, corporate worry speak. I didn't respond. Not because I was cruel, not because I didn't still care, on some level. For the few good ones still trapped in that Kafkaesque nightmare. But because I had already told them, years ago, in meetings, in emails, on sticky notes pinned to project tickets. Nobody ever really listens to the quiet ones who never raise their voices. You build a bridge. You walk them across it every day. They fire you, and then wonder why the river eats their feet. By 10:01 a.m., someone somewhere tried to force a rollback on the new automation stack. It didn't work, because those scripts hadn't failed. They waited, and they kept waiting. I leaned back in my chair, sun on my face, and took a slow sip of my coffee like it was $1,000 scotch. They hadn't seen the worst yet, but they were getting close. By 10:43 a.m., the official smell of panic had settled into the office like burned popcorn, a bitter acid clinging to the back of everyone's throat. The kind of atmosphere where even the standing desks feel accusatory. The IT team did what any cornered animal does. They tore open the automation repository like it was a life raft. And that's when it got real dark, real fast. The repository was a graveyard, a scattering of commits that looked like someone had dumped puzzle pieces from 6 different boxes and hoped they would fit. Some scripts were 2 months old. Others dated back to when our logo still had a Comic Sans font. Comments were sparse. Explanations? Good luck! They found the main automation script, but only half of it. The dependencies called for modules not in the repository, with vague names like Verify Keychain, Signal Sync, and Echo Downstream. The ones that mattered were either obfuscated beyond readability or flat out missing. Someone tried running a reverse grep to trace the cron job links. Nothing. They posted in the internal DevOps chat, "Anyone got the full version of Signal Sync? Can't find it in the latest push. Check the QA branch." Nope. Just stub scripts and a call to a URL that was now dead. And then, like a divine intervention from the lowest rung on the totem pole, Brandon, the junior copywriter who used to microwave fish at 11 o'clock a.m., piped up with a memory. "I think she once said something about the last step authenticates offsite." The room froze. Brandon said he regretted opening his mouth the second the words left his lips. Someone sprinted over to legal. Another person started shouting about data sovereignty. Meanwhile, someone in compliance tried calling Terry, but got sent to voicemail 3 times. They finally looked past the code and into the heartbeat and found nothing. No keys, no tokens, no map. Just the shadows of a structure too complex for buzzwords and diagrams. They hadn't just lost the code. They'd lost the narrative. And back in my kitchen, I was eating cereal like a war god in retirement. My laptop buzzed. A new email from the HR department. Subject: Temporary contract opportunity. Dear Chloe, we hope you're doing well. In light of recent workflow challenges, we'd like to extend an invitation to return in a limited consulting capacity to assist with key transition areas. Compensation is negotiable. Please let us know if you're available to discuss. Sincerely, the HR team. I stared at the screen, my spoon halfway to my mouth. They really thought I'd come back? That after being escorted out like a disgraced barista, I'd waltz back in with a whiteboard marker and a smile? I closed the email, left it unread. No reply. Not even a middle finger in Morse code. Still, I didn't delete it. Because here's the thing. Guilt doesn't care if you're right. For a second, just a breath of a second, I felt the old weight in my chest. The part of me that remembered birthdays, who brought in donuts for interns, who patched someone's ad campaign at midnight because they had a family emergency. The part that still saw faces, not roles. Then I remembered Terry's voice, smug and sterile. Your own automations made you unnecessary. And just like that, the guilt folded in on itself, turned into something sharp, something useful. I opened the logs on my private server, watched them blink. Idle. No access attempts. No keys requested. Nothing. They still didn't understand what they were looking for. They thought it was a code problem. It wasn't. It was an architecture problem. And I was the architecture. The company's first official statement dropped at 11:17 a.m., a tight-lipped tweet from their main account. All lowercase reassurance and meaningless optimism. We're currently addressing a minor service disruption affecting some users. Our team is on it. Stay tuned. Minor. By then, half the back end was eating itself alive. Terry, shiny-suited, soundbite-trained, full of that startup messiah energy, scrambled together an emergency Zoom with department heads and select clients. They weren't calling it a crisis yet, but the smell of it was in the air, thick like mildew in an abandoned crawl space. Someone recorded the call and leaked it to Slack. And because the gods of petty justice are real, I had a front row seat via a Dropbox link from a former coworker who titled the file Meltdown. Terry looked like a hostage. Gone was the confident posture and rehearsed smile. He was sweating through his collar, blinking too fast. Behind him, the wall of motivational posters, work smarter not harder, hustle with heart, do more with less, looked like satire now. Our current disruption stems from, legacy inefficiencies, he said, avoiding eye contact with the camera as if the guilt was a tangible thing. Legacy inefficiencies. Say it louder for the people in the cheap seats. He danced around the fact that nobody could generate reports, or that client billing had stalled, or that the cron system they all took for granted was now a pile of twitching spaghetti with no meatball. One client, off mute, interrupted. Didn't you just say you increased efficiency by offboarding the lead engineer behind all this? Terry fumbled. We're in the process of recalibrating the new architecture. It's already being resolved. Spoiler, it wasn't. Internally, he slammed the digital table. He barked at the IT lead. Rebuild it. Strip the stack. I want her footprint gone. We don't need old code ghosts haunting us. Just start fresh. Oh, honey, they tried. God help them, they tried. Someone spun up a new repository titled AutoStack Recovery. Another poor soul started mapping out a dev timeline on Trello. They brought in a contractor from some LinkedIn connection named Lucas, who claimed he specialized in legacy cleanups. Lucas stared at the obfuscated logic for 2 hours and quietly backed out of the Slack channel, never to be heard from again. Meanwhile, systems continued to choke. The billing queue began duplicating transactions. Some clients got double-charged. The scheduling tools reverted to 2021 time zones. And one particularly broken script started auto-emailing null invoices to executive contacts. Terry reappeared that afternoon on a PR livestream hosted by some no-name business podcast. His voice cracked while explaining how modern companies need to be agile, not reliant on any one person. His neck glistened. His hands fidgeted. I watched it all on my second monitor while editing a recipe blog in another tab, as if I wasn't witnessing the digital collapse of an empire I'd built with my own hands. Then, at 3:12 p.m., something hit my inbox. Not from my old company. Not another HR plea disguised as a re-engagement opportunity. This was different. GitHub. A message from a user I didn't recognize. Handle, @rootcraftdev. Hey there, saw your repo on asynchronous verification loops. Brilliant stuff. We implemented your key swap logic last quarter and saw a 37% speed up in batch reconciliation. Changed our whole system. Quick question. Are you open to freelance, consulting, or full-time? We'd love to chat. Aaliyah, lead engineer, Hatchpoint Systems. Hatchpoint. A small firm, scrappy, mostly under the radar. But I'd seen their name floated in engineering circles. Fast adopters, zero BS. Big respect for clean architecture. They were everything my old company pretended to be before it drowned in meetings and buzzwords. I reread the message twice. Not we're in trouble. Help us? Can you fix what you broke? Just admiration, curiosity, respect. I felt it in my chest like a soft click. Not a roar, not vindication screaming from the rooftops. Just a quiet, well-oiled hinge swinging open. And on my monitor, Terry stammered through another excuse. We are absolutely committed to transparency moving forward, and the disruption is already being resolved. Sure, boss. Resolved by people who weren't even in your building anymore. The cafe was small, tucked between a laundromat that smelled of stale detergent and a bookstore that hadn't updated its front window since the 90s. No Wi-Fi, no QR code menus, just ceramic mugs and the soft hiss of a steam wand that sounded like it hated capitalism as much as I did. I got there early, a habit, sat near the window with my back to the wall. Years of being the ghost in every system trained you to observe first, Move later. Aaliyah arrived 5 minutes late, but with the kind of energy that didn't feel late. Hoodie, blazer, scuffed sneakers that told me they'd built something before. Not someone who used phrases like low-hanging fruit or quick wins. Their handshake was firm but unassuming. They didn't bring a laptop, just a notepad and a pen. "I'm not here to make you pitch yourself," they said, sliding into the chair across from me. "You already did that years ago, apparently. I just didn't know your name." I blinked. They grinned. "Your GitHub commits, especially the asynchronous token gate with rotating signature keys, that saved our team from 6 months of integration hell. We forked it, cleaned it up, and it's been our backbone ever since." My throat caught. I took a slow sip of my bitter coffee, just to stall. They reached into a canvas folder and pulled out a single page. Not a contract, not a slide deck, just a printed offer. Consulting lead engineer. Base rate, 2x your previous comp. Creative autonomy, 100%. Oversight, none from non-technical managers. Start date, whenever you want. Optional relocation bonus. Equipment stipend, therapy voucher. I stared at it as if it might dissolve if I blinked. "You're serious?" I said. "As a root directory," Aaliyah chuckled. The sound escaped me before I could strangle it. I looked at the offer again. My name, spelled correctly. No buzzwords, clean terms, and a blank canvas. "I have one condition," I said. Aaliyah raised an eyebrow. "No managers who use the phrase macro monkey ever." They snorted. "If someone says that in our office, they're on cold brew duty for a month." I didn't shake on it. I just nodded. It was the most yes I'd felt in years. We didn't linger. No contract signing ceremony, no champagne flute. Just two people who understood what good systems feel like when they hum. By the time I got home, the light was shifting through the windows like soft gold. My cat blinked at me from the staircase as if she'd seen this version of me before, but had given up waiting for it. I went downstairs. The server rack sat in the corner of the basement like an old war veteran, dusty, quiet, still alive, but not needed anymore. I opened the metal door, ran a cloth over the top vents, and stared into its blinking heart. This machine had been my secret lighthouse, my failsafe, my soft middle finger in blinking green LEDs. It had hummed me through layoffs, breakups, Sunday nights, and 3 a.m. urgent tickets from people who never said thank you. I powered it down. Fan by fan, the hum fell away until only silence remained. It didn't feel like revenge. It didn't even feel like closure. It felt like evolution, like finally stepping out of the ghost skin they'd shoved me into and remembering I had bones. I coiled the power cords, tucked the drives into static bags, packed it all carefully, like something sacred. Because it was. Not because of what it did to them, but because of what it reminded me I could build. And this time, I would build it where they couldn't touch it. By Wednesday morning, the reckoning had gone viral in the most boring, bureaucratic way possible. Accounting errors. Someone at a logistics company tweeted a screenshot of a red banner alert from the client portal. "Report unavailable. Try again later." The tweet was simple. "Y'all good over there at Nexus Dynamics, or did your entire back end go on vacation?" Under it, dozens of replies. "Same here. Payroll's delayed 2 days now. My invoice just disappeared. WTF?" Then someone posted a photo of a literal spreadsheet printout, coffee stain in the corner, highlighter streaks on a pie chart, and captioned it "Manual Fallback, Week 3 at Nexus." Thought we left this in 2007. The hashtags started crawling in. #workflow fail, #digital regression, #bring back the engineer. At first, I thought it would stay small, a ripple, a few IT folks venting over morning coffee. But by noon, a minor tech blog picked it up. Wired Zone, the kind of site that lives for schadenfreude and startup stumbles. The headline slapped. Startup that fired its automation lead now runs on manual spreadsheets. Nexus Dynamics' unexplained downtime reveals flawed offboarding and overconfidence in VP efficiency overhaul. They quoted anonymous sources. One said, "The system was fine until someone decided the person holding it together was too expensive." Another said, "We literally have no idea how the back end works anymore." The cherry on top? A quiet, sleek post from the Hatchpoint team. No fireworks, no gloating, just a sharp, well-written case study posted to their blog. How modular verification scripts cut our error rates by 37% in Q1, featuring the work of our newest consulting lead engineer. No name mentioned, no shots fired, just the truth dressed in clean UI and technical respect. I read it 3 times, and for once, I didn't feel the need to add anything. My inbox, though, had other plans. LinkedIn lit up like a Christmas tree in hell. "Hey, was reading about Nexus. Is that your architecture there unraveling? Did you really build all that yourself? Like the whole stack? You left just in time, huh? LOL. We miss you, kind of. Any chance you'd be open to consulting? I know someone who needs a ghost like you." The tone ranged from awkward to apologetic. Coworkers who hadn't said a word the day I left were suddenly rediscovering how keyboards worked. One message came from someone who used to roll their eyes when I explained error logging hierarchies during stand-ups. "I didn't realize you were the one keeping the wheels turning. Respect, seriously." I didn't reply. Not out of spite, not even out of pride, but because I didn't owe anyone a damn explanation for being right all along. They saw me as invisible until I was gone. Now they saw the holes I left, felt the draft where I used to stand, and that was enough. I watched the internet swirl, the headlines cycle, the same VP trot out more PR fluff about next-gen upgrades and embracing the learning curve. He still hadn't admitted the real problem. He couldn't, because admitting it meant saying out loud that the quiet woman they ghosted out the side door had been the only thing between them and total collapse. Instead, he leaned on jargon like it was Kevlar. Ongoing infrastructure recalibration, dynamic realignment, temporary regression in output forecasting. I closed the browser. Sunlight spilled across the hardwood. My cat stretched across the radiator, living her best life. And I stayed silent. Because when you build something that truly works, really works, you don't need to scream to be heard. The absence is loud enough. The email hit my inbox at 6:13 a.m., time-stamped like they wanted to prove they'd been working through the night, as if urgency was a substitute for integrity. Subject line: Urgent. Formal request for access. Authentication. Infrastructure recovery. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit there, bolded and unread, while I made my coffee, slow drip, extra strong. I let the weight of what was coming simmer like a pot about to boil over. I finally clicked it open with one hand, still stirring sugar into my mug. Dear Chloe, we hope this message finds you well. Following ongoing infrastructure challenges, we are formally requesting your cooperation in restoring system continuity at Nexus Dynamics, specifically regarding the off-site authentication process that was previously linked to your home-based server during your time with the company. We understand that your transition was abrupt, and documentation may not have been completed to fully hand off all active processes. To that end, we respectfully request temporary access credentials or procedural insights that would allow our recovery team to reestablish normal operations. We trust this matter can be resolved professionally and with mutual respect. Sincerely, Martin D. Laurie, Corporate Counsel, Nexus Dynamics Legal. I didn't laugh. That would have felt too generous. Instead, I stared at the phrasing. Your cooperation. Respectfully request. Mutual respect. As if respect had ever entered the room when they gutted my role and marched me out like a liability. As if they hadn't spent the last week pretending I never existed while scrambling to duct tape my work back together like a knocked-over Jenga tower. They wanted access to the system I'd built on nights and weekends, to the machine I housed, maintained, and protected, to the one part of the infrastructure they couldn't buy back. I placed my mug down, opened the reply window, typed slowly, deliberately. There was no NDA, no contract, and no respect, no greeting, no closing, no hope you're well. Just truth, served cold. I hit send, then hovered for a moment, just long enough to consider whether they deserved even that much. And hit delete. The message, the thread, the account folder. Gone. Flushed from my inbox like the last trace of a life I didn't belong to anymore. I stood up and exhaled. Not a dramatic sigh, not some movie scene monologue, just breath. Clean. Final. My hands didn't shake. That was the part that surprised me. Not the rage. Hell, that had been there since the day they used my code as a stepping stone to throw me off the ledge. But the stillness that followed, that was new. That was mine. Upstairs, my laptop chimed. Hatchpoint had just finalized onboarding 3 new engineers under my umbrella. System scaling, new sectors. Expansion proposals already queued in the internal wiki. I reviewed their names. Young, bright, hungry. I'd be leading them, not managing. Guiding, architecting. We were going to rebuild better. Not from revenge, but from freedom. No legacy bloat, no politics, no VP-shaped shadows breathing down our sprint boards. Just code. Clean, elegant. Mine. In the corner of my office sat the boxed-up server, powered down, dignified. And in some other city, some fluorescent-lit panic room full of people in dress shirts and bad decisions were probably a dozen hands waving over keyboards, trying to resuscitate something they never truly understood. Let them wave. Let them scramble. My system had done exactly what it was designed to do. Survive without me until they couldn't. The server was still warm when I opened the casing. Old aluminum, hand-labeled ports, the power strip zip-tied with the kind of precision you only get from years of ritual. Dust lined the corners like quiet history. I sat on the concrete floor of my basement, legs crossed like I was back in college, staring into the pulsing glow of the last heartbeat they never deserved. One LED blinked in a slow pattern. Green, green, pause, green. The logs were clean. Last activity, 5:00 a.m. Authentication handshake disabled. Confirmation sent nowhere. I rested my hand on the top panel. For years, this machine had been the backbone no one saw. It maintained itself through power outages, coffee spills, and 3 different operating systems. It never asked for thanks. It just worked. Like me. Now, it was time. I reached around back, felt the cable with the small white tag labeled Core Key, and pulled. The light dimmed, then vanished. No hiss, no spark. Just stillness. A perfect silence that made my ears ring. Upstairs, I poured a fresh mug of coffee, extra strong. My cat hopped into the windowsill and pawed at the condensation. The sky was just beginning to break from purple to gold, streaked with clouds that looked like they'd been drawn by a lazy god. I sat in my chair and waited. At exactly 9:00 a.m., the final pulse rippled through the old company's brittle arteries. Their systems didn't crash this time. They froze. Not a bang. A breath held too long. Dashboards that never loaded. Forms that opened and refused to submit. Sync requests looping endlessly like a song with no chorus. But there were no screams this time. No tweets. No blog posts. Because no one cared anymore. The clients had moved on, quietly, efficiently, as users do when trust erodes and time runs out. Nexus Dynamics had gone from a disruptor to a footnote in under 2 fiscal quarters. And when your name stops trending, your failure becomes paperwork. I checked my inbox once, only once. There it was, one last whimper from the ashes. From VP Operations at Nexus Dynamics, COM. Subject: Final request. System Insights. Hi, we understand this may not be ideal timing, but we would deeply appreciate any insight you're willing to provide on the original system architecture or recovery path. We're looking to rebuild from scratch and would value your perspective. Sincerely, Terry L., VP of Operations. I didn't open the message, didn't read past the preview. Just moved it straight to the archive, where it could sit quietly, untouched, next to all the other apologies that came too late. The sunlight reached my feet. I sat back, one hand wrapped around the mug, and let the warmth creep up my fingers. No interviews, no statements, no "I told you so." Just the hum of a house finally free of noise, and a smile, small, private, the kind you wear when you've already won, even if no one's watching. The story of Chloe and her server is a powerful reminder that our value is not determined by the company we work for, but by the skill and passion we bring to our craft. While it may be tempting to seek revenge for injustice, true power lies in building a better future, not in dwelling on a past that failed to appreciate us. When you are quiet, focused, and exceptional at what you do, your work will always speak for itself. Be proud of what you create, for it is your legacy, and it will open doors that were once closed, leading you to places where your true worth is finally recognized and celebrated.